If you're a federal employee, you have undoubtedly heard about the deferred resignation offer that is currently on the table. This was announced on January 28th, and a decision is due by February 6th. Quite a short timeline. But it doesn't help in the decision-making process when there are new things thrown in at the last minute. So it just days before the decision is to be made by millions of federal employees, the Office of Personnel Management updated its frequently asked questions to include that they have granted authority for the Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, or Vera, to the federal agencies so that if an employee qualifies under the early out rules, that they can take advantage of the resignation along with the early out. So this really changes the game for so many people. And I want to make sure that if there's anybody out there who originally looked at the FAQs and did not see this, that they're not passing this opportunity by. Just last week on January 30th, we did a webinar where we talked about lots of different tools that the government has in the downsizing environment, like early outs, discontinued service, the RIF. And then, of course, we had to add in the January 28th offer because that was a very unusual one and not one that had been used before. And so definitely a lot to think about with this, but this new twist is a big game changer for a lot of employees. All right. So hi, my name is Chris Kowalik. Welcome to the Fed Impact Podcast, where we offer candid insights on your federal retirement. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We're glad that you're here. We've had quite a number of new followers in the last week simply because of all of the things going on and the message that we're putting out to be able to try to help as many federal employees as we can. So today's episode is going to be all about the Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, or Vera, or what we typically refer to as an early out. Okay, so this is part of a series, so please check out the other episodes in the series to the topics that pertain to you, because I think you'll find some valuable information in these episodes. And of course, subscribe wherever you're listening to podcasts so that you're sure not to miss an episode. All right, so in order to talk about Vera, or the early out opportunity, we first need to establish what it means to be fully eligible to retire, because at that point, the Vera will make sense. Okay, so here are the rules, and I'm only going to cover them for FERS employees. CSRS employees are long since eligible, and so we're not going to worry about those groups. Okay, so for full eligibility, a FERS employee must be at least age 62 with at least 5 years of service, at least age 60 with at least 20 years of service, or have reached their minimum retirement age, which is somewhere between 55 and 57, depending on the year that they were born. Okay. And at that MRA, they have to have at least 30 years of service under their belt at that time. Okay, and so those three different sets of eligibility, an employee would need to meet both the age and the service year requirement within that set. But you only have to meet one of those sets to be fully eligible to retire. Well, aside from the age and service requirements, what does it mean to be fully eligible? Well, in this case, it means that there are no penalties to your pension and your pension begins right away. And so the idea that with respect to the eligibility rules, that being fully eligible grants you an immediate pension with no penalties, that's awesome. The part that I think confuses some people is the early out opportunity, or Vera, that's the technical name for it, simply relaxes the eligibility requirements, but everything else stays the same. It's a pretty amazing program, and it's designed to encourage those people who are otherwise pretty darn close to being eligible to retire, and affords them an opportunity to leave a little bit early, as the name would imply. Okay? So with respect to the Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, this was just announced. In fact, I looked at the FAQs last night before I went to bed and then again this morning, and here we are with a new set of rules. So like I mentioned, this is a complete game changer for hundreds of thousands of employees who are considering this offer. Honestly, the first time they looked at this deferred resignation offer, they may have completely dismissed it, because since there wasn't an early out being offered with it, it simply was going to turn into a deferred retirement, which is not what anybody wanted, because you lose all sorts of benefits when that happens. So the fact that this is now under a Vera, a great opportunity for you to be able to go ahead and retire and be able to draw a pension way sooner than you originally thought. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we need to talk about with respect to Vera. A lot of people ask about health insurance and life insurance and how that changes. As long as you have the normal eligibility rules met for those plans, you will have an opportunity to keep them. So we'll talk more about that here in just a moment, but certainly a big deal with respect to health insurance and life insurance. The next is the Special Retirement Supplement. So this program is the one that kind of looks like Social Security, but it's paid prior to the age of 62. So from the moment that you retire all the way up until the age you turn 62 and are now eligible for Social Security. That benefit will stay intact with an early out, but there's a catch. The catch is the Special Retirement Supplement won't begin until you've reached your minimum retirement age. So OPM just announced that they have granted Vera authority to federal agencies to allow employees, if they otherwise would meet the rules for an early out, that they could use that in conjunction with the deferred resignation offer that's currently on the table. I want to talk a little bit about the rules of what that means and what it means to qualify for a Vera. So for this early out, the real name for it is a Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, or Vera. The slang for it is simply early out. You would need to meet one of two sets of eligibility. You either need to be age 50 with at least 20 years of service, or any age with 25 years of service. And we've had a lot of military veterans ask us these questions. Does my military time count in that? And the answer is yes, as long as you have made a deposit to get credit for that time, or you have, quote, bought back your military service. Okay, so if that's the case, then that's going to be included in this creditable service. The reality is you need 5 years of actual federal time to be qualified for a federal pension at all. And so as long as you've met that, then all of the rest of your years are going to count as normal, even if they were in the military, as long as a deposit has been paid for them. Okay, so again, age 50 with 20 years of service, or any age with 25 years of service. So you can see, based on the full eligibility criteria, which is much more stringent, the Vera criteria really is a softened version of that eligibility requirement, which is going to open the door for many more federal employees to be able to take this and begin to receive their pension right away. Okay, I believe this is a game changer for this offer. Now, this offer has its faults in all sorts of different ways. There's all sorts of challenges with this that federal employees have not been shy about expressing, but given the legitimacy that this program is being given through the federal agencies, providing some written terms of the resignation, it's giving federal employees more of the confidence that this is a legitimate program that they're able to take advantage of. So with respect to the Vera, the actual early out, a couple of things that we want to talk about. The first is FEHB. So the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program is a super, super important program for a lot of people, and you rely on that health insurance probably for you and for your family. Normally, there is a 5-year rule associated with FEHB, and you need to be enrolled in FEHB on the day that you were retired and 5 years prior. So in this case, we're talking about September 30th, if that's going to be your retirement date, and rewind 5 years, you need to have been enrolled in the FEHB plan up to that point to be eligible to keep it in retirement. Now, there is a special exception for those retiring under a true Vera. Not just that you meet the criteria, but that one has been offered to you and that is what you are taking. Okay, so with the Vera exception here, if you, let's say you enrolled in FEHB 3 years ago, and you are not going to have the 5 years by the time September 30th of your retirement date rolls around, there is a special exception that in the event that you are offered an early out, that they will waive the 5-year requirement as long as you were already enrolled in the FEHB plan when the agency received the Vera authority, which is just recently. Okay. And so if you enrolled perhaps in this open season last fall and it became effective January 1st, we now have an opportunity for you to be able to keep FEHB in retirement, even though you didn't meet the 5-year rule. Okay. So that's for your health insurance. For life insurance, there's no special exception. Okay. You had to have had it for 5 years immediately prior to retirement and be enrolled in it on the day that you retire in order to keep it. The next program I want to talk about is the Special Retirement Supplement. Now, this is the one that kind of looks a little bit like Social Security, but it's paid prior to the age of 62. So this one works a little bit differently in an early out scenario. So let's say you're 50 and you've got your 20 years of service, you qualify for the Vera and you're going to take it. In this case, you would not receive the special retirement supplement until you've reached your minimum retirement age, which is probably 57. Okay, so between 50 and 57, you will not receive the supplement, but from 57 all the way through 62, you would. Okay, now there's some people who will qualify for an early out who have already met the age of 57, and if that's the case, then the supplement will begin right away. The last program that I want to talk about with respect to the Vera is the Thrift Savings Plan. So you all know that the TSP is designed to be a retirement vehicle, and the IRS determines when that timeline is. So right now, as we stand here today, that requirement is age 59 and a half. So it's intended that you leave your money alone in the thrift savings plan until you reach that point in life, and then you're free to use it after that point. Of course, paying taxes and all of that on top of it. But it's very possible that those who go out under an early out may have a penalty on money coming out of the thrift savings plan. Let me explain how. If we have somebody who's 50 and they take the Vera, so they qualified for that age 50 with 20 years of service rule under the Vera, and they go ahead and retire at that time, they have not met the rule that the IRS has for plans like the thrift savings plan. This special rule says for anyone who retires or separates from service in the year in which they turned 55 or older, they are permitted to take money out of these types of accounts without penalty. But in this case, in this example that I'm giving, if you are 50 years old and you retire, you not only suffer a penalty from 50 to 55 for all the money you take out of the TSP, you also suffer a penalty from age 55 all the way to 59 and a half. So that penalty goes all the way from the time you separate all the way to 59 and a half. Now, there are ways to avoid that penalty. And of course, we want to help you to be able to do that. But you do need to understand that you're going to be more limited in the way that you can take your TSP dollars to be able to use them. Now, if your plan is to take the TSP and move it out to a private IRA and take it completely out of the TSP, you are welcome to do that. The IRS does not penalize you for that action. Okay, it is only when you take the money yourself to be able to use it. If it's going to another custodian, no problem. But it is important to realize that there are limited exceptions to be able to avoid that penalty if you are in this situation. Now, if you happen to be someone who's 55 with 20 or 25 years of service and you're taking the Vera, then you've met the IRS's special exception, that age 55 rule, to where you will not be penalized for money that you take out of the TSP prior to 59 and a half. Okay, so there is definitely a lot of things going on with respect to these big decisions that federal employees are trying to make. There are millions of you in motion right now trying to figure out what the right step is. The interesting part is with this Vera edition, it just threw several 100,000 of you in the pool of people who are considering taking this offer. And so I hope that you look at your numbers. That is my biggest hope for you, is that you look at your numbers, you know what you're getting yourself into, so you can go into retirement eyes wide open, no surprises. Okay. Now, if you did not listen to the January 30th webinar that we did on this whole thing, please go find that webinar. You can find it on our site at fedimpact.com/webinar. You'll see the link to the replay right there on the site. I encourage you to go watch it. The Vera piece was added after we did that webinar. So just know, since you're listening to this particular session today, just know that Vera was not on the table at the time that that webinar was released. Okay. If throughout all of this, you have realized how ill-prepared you feel for retirement, I encourage you to do something about it. So we do retirement training for federal employees all over the country. We've even got some overseas locations. And we have the great honor to be able to train tens of thousands of federal employees every year on their benefits. I encourage you to get to an in-person workshop. You can find all of the locations and dates on our site at fedimpact.com/attend. You'll be able to see all the available locations and dates, and hopefully find one that is near to you. Okay. Best yet, you're going to have an opportunity to be able to have some one-on-one help afterwards to be able to get all of this straight. All right. So you're listening to the podcast today. If you've been on the go and you haven't quite been able to jot down some of these links that we've provided to you, you can take out your phone and text the word podcast to 224-444-6144, and we will get you over a link. We'll ask a couple of questions just so that we can get everything to you. We'll email you over that link, and that way you will have that nice and handy. Of course, we hope that you'll subscribe to the podcast player that you're listening to right now so that you're sure not to miss an episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and best of luck to you as you make this really big decision.